This is the pre-meeting of the Mobile City Council Tuesday, May the 16th. We have approval of minutes from May 2nd.
Good.
Appeals, we have requests for waive the noise ordinance on May the 19th, 5 p.m. until 10 p.m. on St. Stephen's Road. June 25th, 3 p.m. until 6:30 at Sage Park. June 17th, 12 p.m. until 7 p.m. Texas Street Park. June 18th, 3 p.m. until 10 p.m. Cooper Riverside Park. May 28th, 9 a.m. until 2 p.m. Arlington Park. May 20th, 10 a.m. until 11:30 a.m. Medal of Honor Park. And May 27th, this is at Langham Park from 1 p.m. until 6 p.m.
Districts 1, 2, and 7, y'all fine?
Public hearings. Today is a public hearing to declare the structures at 2102 Agate, is that right? Agate Avenue, 556 Oak Drive Court, 2763 Gonzales Road, 5800 Helen Street, public nuisances and ordering them demolished. Public hearing. Today is a public hearing to consider approval of a certificate of public convenience and necessity to Africatown Freedom Tours LLC to operate a bus service. Presentation of petitions and other communications to the council. Carlos Finley to invite the entire community to celebrate the Dora Franklin Finley African American Heritage Trail. Barbara Robinson, accessibility issues in original downtown area and needed improvements. John Kilpatrick, update the council on veterans recovery resources.
Madam Clerk,
Yes, sir.
did we ever do the proper paperwork to vacate the right of way and distribute?
That was for the Dora Trail.
Yeah.
I haven't done it yet, but I think we were gonna do an agreement rather than.
Well, they're gonna want to make that same announcement this weekend with the opening of the Franklin House.
Okay, then I'll do it.
Does it require council approval?
The agreement, if we're doing it like we did with the villages at Spring Hill, yes.
Well, be nice if we could do it before 10 o'clock. And move it to consent so that they'll be able to maintain it and address that at the same time they open the Franklin House this weekend.
I'll just see if I can
If
get
that's
here.
okay with you guys. Vacating the rounder in the center and in Basil Street so that they can maintain it and put the
Got a
campground
traffic
sign.
circle.
It's not a vacation of the
Traffic
property,
circle.
though. It's just a
Move
agreement
it.
to use the property. Is that right?
Yeah, vacation would have to go through city admin and everything.
What did
It's
you guys do?
Traffic circle
What
there.
did y'all do out in West Mobile in the traffic circles and right of ways? Did y'all vacate it or did y'all just allow them to?
Yeah, we didn't vacate anything.
Can we use the same language that they're using out there for that traffic circle?
Yeah, I can modify that agreement. It's an agreement to allow them to maintain.
Right. That's fine. And can we, is it okay if we add that, you guys, or does that require council approval?
It's required council approval in the past. So
Is it okay if we add that to today's agenda?
I'm fine with it. You got two other people.
Let's please get that.
Ordinance is held over. 22021, ordinance to amend Chapter 39, Article 10, Division 1, and Chapter 22, fireworks, the Mobile City Code.
Mr. President,
Ms. Reynolds.
I've distributed a modified version of this ordinance that just essentially adds a section F that says, notwithstanding the foregoing, consumer grade fireworks as defined in Alabama Code 817-210 shall be lawful for any person to possess, store, offer for sale, sell at retail, or use or explode each year on New Year's Eve and New Year's Day and July 3rd and 4th. And it shall not, this subsection shall not apply in the event the fire official has suspended the outdoor use of fireworks under the foregoing subsection. After additional conversation with Ms. Kessler this morning, I agree with her, or we mutually agreed that the offer for sale and sell at retail for the consumer grade shall be stricken from this. If y'all have any objection to that, I'll make that a change to the document before it's offered as an amendment.
Any comments with Mr. Reynolds? Cool.
Did we talk about within the city limits?
Yeah, and this is pertaining specifically to consumer grade. So the way it's stated now that they could sell consumer grade fireworks for essentially 4 days a year within the city. So, I mean, it's likely not practical for someone to ramp up and sell for 4 days a year these fireworks, and there's not a whole lot to gain. So I'll ask that we move that out of it.
So we're allowing them to sell for more than 4 days.
No. For consumer grade fireworks, this really deals with the use. So the consumer's use of the fireworks, they can be used on 4 days. They can be possessed, stored, or used on 4 days a year. But the sale of consumer grade fireworks would not be within the city. It would be outside of the city, like in the county. But sparklers and novelties would be allowed to be sold year round with the exception of Mardi Gras.
Define consumer grade.
Well, it's a big, long definition, but the ordinary, as you would go to, Joe's Fireworks or Jerry's Fireworks or whatever and buy what they sell off the shelves is generally what a consumer grade fireworks is.
We're not talking Roman candles.
Yes.
That is consumer grade.
Mhm. You can still use them. You can still use them in the city on those 4 days, but the purchase of those would be stricken from the city.
I live in a neighborhood where a Roman candle would light the whole neighborhood on fire. That's all I'm saying. And where population densities are so high, you run the risk of causing some unintended consequences with the embers that fall from Roman candles. Where you live is totally different. Lipscomb's Landing, River de Chine. I've been on the boat down there for the 4th of July and see the big fireworks show that the homeowners put on down there. But that's open space around water. You allow somebody to shoot off Roman candles at Oakley, we got a 5-alarm fire in 10 minutes.
Yep.
So how do we address that?
Well, I think it's a hard needle to thread. There's no question about it. But I think allowing the fire official to suspend the outdoor use of fireworks under subsection D, which describes, essentially hazardous conditions that may exist that could, further exacerbate a fire being started or something to that effect. So we'd rely on our fire officials to make the call essentially on these 4 days, or we're a go or a no-go.
Let's hear from Ms. Kessler, and then I'd also like to hear from the administration after Ms. Kessler.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
The difference, as I was discussing with Councilman Reynolds this morning, is that consumer fireworks includes the audibles and aerials, which are prohibited in the other cities that we looked at. Chief Lamy isn't here this morning, but I have discussed this with him, and he said he would want to review additional restrictions if audibles and aerials were permitted. He didn't feel comfortable saying just outright, yes, they're safe in all circumstances, which I think is what you're hinting at here, Councilman. But he said he would have to review it. And these definitions are very complicated. There are 3 different sources you have to look at, and they include the amount of firepower. I don't even know, I'm not familiar with all the chemicals that are named in them, but that was his general position, that if you want to expand to audibles and aerials, he would want to review and determine what safety precautions would be necessary.
And I talked with Flo about this, that these 4 days, July 4th is the nearest one to us. But if we pass this today, Chief Lamy can, do a thorough review of that list. And if he wants to enumerate specific aerials, or I don't remember the other term, to be excluded from use, we could always add it to the ordinance.
I'd like to hear something from the administration. Chief, is any?
I haven't had a chance to talk to Chief Lamy about it. I'd like to have an opportunity to talk to him and see what his concerns are.
Okay. Mr. Days?
Yeah, I just, I just don't understand why we need to be an outlier with respect to the other large cities in the state, unless there's a really good reason for us to be one. And I don't see it right now. I'd also like to hear from Chief Lamy about this.
Council, I'm gonna ask if we probably can just lay this over for another 2 weeks and give Chief enough time to study and then come back to us and everything with this.
Well, I would raise one concern with laying it over, and that would be that Memorial Day is approaching, and some of these fireworks distributors that are out there today want to be able to, continue to do what they planned on doing, and that is to sell the novelties and sparklers no matter what. So, I mean, I'd really like to try to get something passed today. So if we could get Chief Lamy on the phone, maybe, get something from him, that's what I would prefer.
I
to
thought
try
they
to get
said he
something
had to
done
look
today.
through and study.
Yeah,
Well, that's what I mean. So that's why I offered up the solution to try to get something passed today and then amend it based on the feedback from Chief Lamy at a later date.
Why don't we just do it the other way? Why don't we go ahead and pass what was originally submitted to us, and then, which would allow the sparklers and all that. And then if Chief Lamy comes back and says he's comfortable with consumer grade fireworks, we could amend it then.
Well, because you're taking away a citizen's right that they're afforded right now. The citizen has the right to go buy and shoot fireworks right now, today. That is their right. And instead of just broadly and sweepingly take away that right, we have the ability to thread the needle.
I would again point out, there's no other large city in the state of Alabama that allows people to shoot off these fireworks whenever they want to shoot them off. There's got to be a reason behind that. And it comes down to the public. I suspect it comes down to the public safety.
Mr. Carroll?
I didn't know that we could shoot Roman candles inside the city limits right now anyway. I always thought it was illegal. The better part of common sense tells me it should be illegal, just out of an abundance of caution. However, there are some areas of the city that have put on family shows for a long time, especially at Lipscomb's Landing, and back over on the river right there. Those are private property owners that have constantly done this. Even this past weekend, Mother's Day weekend, the Parkers, Sam Parker and his family had the big river jazz fest and all of that down there, and they do their big fireworks show. So some type of common ground based on tradition in areas that are wet and open, we might be able to find a way, or may have to use some type of permitting in order to allow those areas to use Roman candles. But just to allow anybody downtown in concentrated areas with blooms, with fire blooms like that is a little nerving. The wording needs to be correct so that we get it right. I would hate any unintended consequence, even knowing that in the past I've been one of the people that have broken that rule. You know what I mean? But as I got older, I learned that there's some things you just don't do. I can understand bottle rockets and screamers and poppers and cherry bombs, but a Roman candle, that's a big hazard and a big liability.
So that's and I understand that, and that's obviously a possible concern by the fire chief, and that's why my suggestion is that we restrict the use of those items to 4 days a year, but then furthermore, expect that Chief Lamy in the coming weeks is going to come back to us with some specifically excluded items that he can't enforce or, creates too much of a hazard, and we can mutually agree that we're going to back that out of the ordinance. But passing the one that just takes away their right from everybody, I'm not in favor of that.
Barbara?
Yeah, Chief Laney's on his way down. If y'all want to move through the agenda,
Sure.
then we come back to it.
Okay.
Resolutions held over. 01532, authorized agreement between the City of Mobile, AlDOT, and the Mobile County Commission for Regional Transportation Operations Program Congestion Management. 01533, authorized agreement with Peyton Hickman to provide tennis lessons and clinics for Parks and Recreation. 08534, approved purchase order to Capital Tractor Inc. for 2 utility carts for Parks and Rec. 08535, approved purchase order to Global Industries for office furniture for Office of Professional Responsibilities. 08536, approved purchase order to North American Fire Equipment Inc. for hydrofusion rescue struts with accessories. 08537, approved purchase order to Coast Custom Mobile Vending for enclosed trailer for MPD. 08538, approved purchase order to Sandy Sansing Ford Lincoln for replacement engine for Ford ambulance. 08539, approved purchase order to Sun South for John Deere Moore for Parks Department. 08540, approved purchase order to TSA Inc. for notebook computers. 08541, approved purchase order CDW Government for surveillance cameras and accessories. 08542, approved purchase order to Sun South for 2 John Deere Zero Turn mowers. 08543, approved purchase order to Sun South for 2 John Deere grooming mowers. 09546, transfer funds from unassigned general fund to various capital projects in the capital improvements fund. 09547, transfer funds from public facility improvement fund to miscellaneous grant funds as match for Alabama Department of Economic and Community Affairs state funded electric vehicle charging infrastructure grant program. 21548, authorized contract with Bill Smith Electric for installation of emergency generator for MPD First Precinct. 21549, authorized contract with McElhaney Construction Company for Phase 2 construction of the 3 Mile Creek Watershed Restoration Project. 31550, authorized grant application to Alabama Department of Economic and Community Affairs for the state-funded electric vehicle charging infrastructure grant program. 37551, consider approval of the certificate of public convenience and necessity for Far West Side Limo and Shuttle to operate a shuttle service. Consent resolutions being introduced, 37552, 553, 554, 555 are recommending approval to the ABC Board for issuance of a lounge retail class 1 license to the Gentleman's Corner Nail and Spa Salon on Airport Boulevard, for issuance of a lounge retail liquor class 2 license for Fairground Liquor at Ziegler Boulevard, for issuance of a retail beer table wine off-premises only license for Fairground Chevron on Ziegler Boulevard, for issuance of a retail beer table wine off-premises only license for Brothers Market on North Cody Road. 40, 556, 557, 558, 559 are declaring the structures public nuisances and ordering them demolished. 60, 560, 561, 562, 563, 564, and 565 are determined appropriations to Mobile Law Enforcement Foundation, Callaway Smith Middle School, 2 for Callaway Smith Middle School, Bishop State Community College Foundation, Mims Park Athletics, and American Society of Botanical Artists, Inc. serve a public purpose in approving payment. Resolutions being introduced, 01566, authorized agreement between the City of Mobile, AlDOT, and the Mobile County Commission for Regional Transportation Operations Program Congestion Management. 01567, authorized exclusive franchise agreement with Neutron Holdings, Inc., doing business as Lime. 015,
Mr. President,
Mr. Davis?
I have some questions about this item.
Yes, sir.
The first question is, when we have had these services before, can you characterize the utilization of these services? Has it been widespread utilization? I don't have any sense of how many people there are out there that want to use this service.
Right. It depends. A lot of it is naturally located around the densest part of the city. People were using it to run errands. A lot of people were just joyriding on them, using them for recreational use. But we did see in the later stages of the Gotcha, that was the brand of scooter we were using most recently. They were being used out in Tillman's Corner. They were being used for people who were, they'd walk downtown from Midtown, they'd ride back on a scooter, et cetera. We saw them usage around the university as well.
And what are the terms of the liability arrangement? What happens if someone injures himself on one of these things?
We might want to have Flo or somebody come up to that. We have the standard level of indemnification that we would have in any of
I
our
think in the
agreements.
past, we've had $1 million,
I think it's $1 million.
that we were indemnified, but the company itself had like $1 million per claim or something like that. I see Mr. Rossler back there.
Yeah.
The indemnification is on pages 7 and 8. Wrote it, rewrote it, tried to make it as tight as we possibly could, but really focused on the insurance. In addition to the city being an additional insured on their policy, we tightened it up where they have to provide 4 or 5 different endorsements that specifically cover the city of Mobile for this operation. So the way it is intended to work, the insurance would apply to any accident involving the use of these scooters. The city would be entitled to the insurance coverage. If the policy provides $1 million self-insured retention, the company has the duty to indemnify also, so they would be indemnifying for that first $1 million.
And Jim, what are the terms? What are the requirements on the company to retrieve these vehicles? I've noticed, and you go to other cities, they're just all over the place. They're hanging out. Is there some requirement on the part of the company to retrieve the vehicles within a certain period of time?
There is, 24 hours. But Lime, I expect will be here next Tuesday to answer any of the questions and make a presentation. But they are going under a different model this time. They have met with the Downtown Alliance, looked at areas around downtown, and they want to have specified parking areas that they call corrals.
Right.
That instead of somebody using a scooter, riding down Dolphin Street and just abandoning it on the sidewalk, they are required to return it to the corral or the stall. And if they don't, there's a monetary payment that they owe, kind of like a fine.
Mm-hmm.
If they just ride it down the sidewalk and get off of it and go into a bar or something, those charges are still ticking. So they are moving toward that model that they say works well in other
Right.
cities,
Right.
to have the corrals or stalls.
Okay. So that's their intention is to install the corrals.
Yes.
Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Which
And,
would be in current parking spaces now. They would just take a parking
Right.
space or 2 or 3 on
Right.
Dolphin Street, for example, and paint them a different color, put something around it. That would be the corral.
Well, that's certainly preferable than being able just to drop it wherever.
Absolutely.
And the only other question I have is, what's happening in the other large city jurisdictions in the state? I mean, what's happening in Birmingham and Huntsville and Montgomery with respect to these vehicles? Are they permitted in those cities?
I will vouch for Birmingham because they just entered into an agreement with Lime not too long ago. And we got a copy of their agreement and kind of used it, to to go back through our agreement to make sure that we were, dotting every I and crossing every T.
Huntsville has them as well,
Okay.
and they utilize docking stations. It's a different brand. So instead of using corrals that have a dock, you have to kind of roll it into the rocket.
Okay,
Yeah, that's right.
thank you.
And Lime is rolling out a new geofencing technology. So they know when you return the scooter to the corral. They know when you don't.
Right, and you also can't go outside the boundary.
You cannot go outside boundaries. They also are working on what they call advanced sidewalk detection. So that if you're driving at full speed down a sidewalk, their computer will detect that and automatically slow you down. That's not being used right now, but they told us that they're working on that. They also have the ability to geofence, like for New Year's Eve celebration here in downtown. They could totally shut off all scooters in the downtown area, or they could slow the maximum speed of them down when there's a big crowd.
Jim, forgive me if I'm reading from an earlier version of this, but I thought that sidewalk riding was no longer allowed.
We are moving away from that.
So
But
you keep
you
saying-
and I,
You keep saying riding on the sidewalks. I thought that was no longer allowed.
this agreement, yes, well, this agreement prohibits Lime from permitting sidewalk riding in the downtown area. And you and I talked about that, and I will provide to the council, to you, Mr. Carroll, an ordinance that prohibits the riding of scooters, bikes, et cetera, on sidewalks in downtown Mobile. I think that's been the major complaint. I also think that's been the source of a couple of claims that have been made where people have been hit from behind by people on scooters on the sidewalks.
And also following the same traffic laws as slow-moving vehicles.
Yes, yeah, they are subject to traffic laws. So they come to an intersection where there's a stop sign, they're supposed to stop. You're right.
Hey, Jim and Matt, we don't see that many of the scooters out west, but we do have a lot of sidewalks. Is the same prohibition against riding down sidewalks going to affect West Mobile?
They should be riding scooters on sidewalks anyway.
Well, I'm aware, but they do, so same sort as you're writing into the language for sidewalks in downtown. Should we
I think
include
we can
that
make that city.
just citywide?
You talk about motorized scooters, right? Not the kick and goes that the kids ride.
We're not supposed to ride bicycles on sidewalks.
You're not supposed to, but they do. And here, I'll give you my thinking, and I've had discussions with the people at Lime. The original draft of this prohibited the riding on all sidewalks throughout the city. And the ordinance that I put together would have applied citywide. Lime said, especially at night, we'd recommend you ride a scooter down the sidewalk along Dolphin instead of being out in the street. And then the other thinking was when I look out my front window on any given Saturday, I see these kids, zipping up and down the sidewalk, 6, 7 years old. It's a slow speed, but it's a motorized scooter. It was my thinking that isn't it safer to have them on the sidewalks than out in the street? But if the council wants to have that ordinance apply citywide, I can do that very, very easily.
Because of the density of downtown, that might be a reason for downtown as opposed to West Mobile, because the density is certainly not the same on sidewalks out west. I don't know, what do you think, Joe?
I'd just make it effective downtown.
It's also, I think as you see the increased adoption of scooters, because the adoption increases the longer they're in place. We saw that in Gotcha. We can revisit it if it becomes a problem.
Yeah, if we see it, just.
And the geofencing technology is getting better over time. I think eventually we get to the point where the geofencing they use excludes sidewalks. It's harder downtown because of the narrowness of the thoroughfares and some of the sidewalks. It might be a little bit easier out west to restrict it to use the geofencing to restrict it to the streets.
Talk about line of sight.
We'll just
Yeah.
Let's just
Let's just leave it as it is.
leave the sidewalk prohibition down here.
See how it goes.
Yeah, and the geofence needs to be the Henry Hankin loop. That needs to be the cutoff boundary. You can, in Orlando, once you get outside the boundary, they cut off, period. So we need to ask them to have that same prohibition. Once they pass Broad Street, they're off. If not, they're gonna wind up in the surrounding neighborhoods again.
Well, people were using them to go from their home to downtown.
Right.
Yeah, but
Vice versa.
what I'm saying is that if we don't, they're gonna wind up around Washington Square again. They're gonna wind up Spanish Plaza.
But they gotta bring it back to, they gotta bring it
That
to
would be picked
corral.
up.
They gotta
Line
bring
knows they're there.
So, all right, so just, it would be nice if we had the same technology that cuts them off immediately once they get to the boundary, though. That way, they're not everywhere anymore.
But how do they get out west if we're going to geofence downtown? I've seen some of those scooters around South Alabama.
They would still be able to go anywhere within the city boundaries. It would just be their opportunity to corral their monetary thing.
So there's a monetary fee for it to be picked up and returned.
That's right. If they're not in a corral, they have to pay extra.
Just get rid of everybody going from downtown to.
Jeez.
Yeah. More power to them.
Mr. Carroll, you're suggesting geofencing that would turn the scooter off at the Hank Loop?
Turn it off. Once you get outside the loop, it
Understand.
turns the scooter off.
I'll say this, that would fundamentally change the RFP that we issued, which was for citywide services and this franchise agreement.
Okay, well, don't do it now, maybe in the future. Move on.
Thank you.
01568, authorized agreement between the City of Mobile and Board of School Commissioners of Mobile County to retain services of the Gulf Coast Technology Center.
Any questions, council?
What is this?
This is a partnership with the school system, that is, the tech center houses Starting Springs groups, wants to do this project drive.
Are they gonna move?
01569, authorized agreement between the City of Mobile, the Mobile County Commission, and Airbus Americas, Inc. 01570,
Britton, I mentioned some language to you. I think I mentioned it to Ricardo yesterday. Instead of just blowing it up right now, I'll send it over to, if Ricardo, I'll send it over to you, see what he thinks. I mean, we're not voting on it today anyway. See what everybody thinks. It was just a sentence, I think, in the indemnification section. Kind of broad, really broad and
Okay.
vague. That might need some attention.
Yeah, happy to look at that. You want any discussion of the project itself today?
Why don't you just,
Sure. This, the first project on the agenda, the number that was just called out was what was commonly referred to as Project Ramp, which was the Airbus expansion and ramp up that was announced basically 1 year ago this week. We've been negotiating this with Airbus and with the state for the last 18 months. It's come in a final form and now ready for execution. This project gets the total investment of Airbus in the community up to over $2 billion. The current project requires a minimum CapEx of $850 million with a new job total of additional 1,000 jobs. With the other three projects that have previously been announced going back to 2012 with the original A320 FAL, with the A220 FAL that was finalized in 2019. In this project, they've committed to at least $1.66 billion in CapEx. What we know with the current project, given the cost overruns, just based on the construction costs right now, that project alone appears to total 1.3, which puts their total CapEx over $2 billion. This is set up with a $10 million cash incentive for this project, which is consistent with what has been discussed with the company now for over 18 months. In addition, this project agreement also has 2.5 million of that 10 million set aside specifically for workforce training and training of Mobile County residents, and specific requirements that 2.5 be spent in partnership with the 2-year college system with South Alabama and with the school system partners in Mobile County to build up workforce and a workforce of Mobile County residents. The average wage for these jobs are $62,500. Over $31 an hour is the average hourly wage. That's the parameters of the overall project. Happy to take any questions at this point. Councilman Carroll, happy to look at the language that you suggested. I know Councilman Reynolds also has some suggested language with regard to the use of the funds. We're gonna get some answers on those questions.
Use of funds?
To look at incentivizing how they attract and retain employees, given the 1,000 jobs that they're going to be recruiting to fill these positions. That's going to put them well up over 2,000 employees on site. As you know, with the job growth going on at the major employees in the city, attracting talent is a major issue for all the employers.
Council.
I wonder if we could put some type of local preference for local residents in there.
We have in the agreement good faith efforts, best efforts. In addition to that, for the first time, we're utilizing the Mobile First initiative, which has a lot of reporting requirements and requirements that hit certain percentages when it comes to not only local contractors, but also hiring of local residents. And that has been incorporated in this agreement.
The good faith effort written has been used for a long time, but it doesn't have enough teeth in it. Is there something else we can do?
Well, the two major things that we have in the agreement right now that have not been used before are the requirements to comply with the aspirational goals set forth in the Mobile First initiative that the chamber developed, and the requirements that $2.5 million be spent specifically for training of Mobile County residents, so that they can build up their workforce through the existing residents.
I'll call.
Sure. Happy to help. Okay.
Anyone else? All right, thank you. Council, don't want to hold up Chief Lane. We want to ask the chief to come on up here. We'll go back to ordinance 22-021.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Happy to answer any specific questions that you have, but I think it still holds true with the concerns that we had before, is really try to model what our, other sister cities had throughout the state of Alabama. And because just like Councilman Carroll stated earlier, the consumer grade fireworks just doesn't include Roman candles. It also includes the large cakes that you see that got multiple fireworks firing from a lot of different directions. Also includes the mortar tubes where they can fire the mortars up repeatedly over housing. And at some point, we just can't simply regulate that and within the city. And when you've got different areas and concentrated areas within the city, it can become problematic to where when you're firing something, it literally could cover 6 to 7 houses at a time. And, it's just going to be up to the council's preference on whether or not that's what they want to allow in the city. But from an enforcement standpoint, it's going to be, I think that's why most cities have either been cut and dry on either they're going to allow them or they're not going to allow them, because it becomes very difficult, I would imagine, for consumers to start to understand what's allowed and what's not allowed in the city. And so I believe that's why many have the only difference that they've really started to change is the novelty fireworks, because they're typically not aerial devices being fired up. It's just something small that the kids are going to be playing with. Huntsville allowed those. We certainly felt like that was okay. But it's still, we think, some concerns there with just having free reign to firing a lot of the consumer grade fireworks throughout the city.
So, Mr. Reynolds.
But our city has enjoyed that freedom and right forever. So
Yeah,
why now? I guess the question would be we've survived to this point. Why would we not survive going forward with consumer grade fireworks just continuing to be used as they are today?
Well, I think looking back at information the fire department, the city has put out, I found some documentation where they were putting out that it was not allowed within the city. So they've been putting that information out for quite some time. And so, yeah, I think that in any event, you're gonna have people that continue to use them, even if it's not allowed. But then what changes, what can change if you're saying that they're not allowed, then you're saying they're allowed. And so I think that, that could change based on the information that's getting put out. So I certainly think that this is as you said earlier, Councilman Reynolds, is a thread the needle topic. There's a lot of cities that are on one end of the spectrum on this, but I think it all boils down to the population density of your city, the hazards that can be, occur throughout the city, especially during the dry season. I think there's 4th of July, there are some concerns there, even out in West Mobile, but people are going to shoot fireworks. We understand that. But it's just what message are you going to send out there and what are you going to allow? It's basically what it boils down to. I still believe that my preference would be to follow the other cities, with the exception of allowing the novelties like Huntsville. Certainly thought that was reasonable. But I think I would have to have as a fire chief, it'd be very difficult for me to go against everybody else to say that, hey, I'm okay with it, when clearly other cities that are similar in our nature are not.
So right now, my understanding is that fireworks, consumer grade fireworks are allowed for everyone right now. And I guess I would ask the objection to scaling it way back from what it is now, scaling it way back to limiting it to only 4 days per year, to allow for consumer grade fireworks to be possessed, stored, and shot. Not allowing those fireworks to be sold in the city at all, ever. And then furthermore, if we pass this as I have it structured today, would you have any objection to offering up specific categories in this very convoluted list that exists of fireworks you would like to further restrict?
I think we're always okay to have that conversation. I think that I would also caution you not just to put blanket days. I think need to be specific times on those days. Certainly don't think that you would want people to continue to fire large fireworks at 3, 4 in the morning. So I would not just restrict it to the days. I would be very cautious about the times that you're allowing.
Okay, so
If that's the direction that you choose to go.
right. So are you okay with us passing this as written today, and then you coming back to us with a excluded list, to still allow these businesses that are, their full intent is to sell fireworks for Memorial Day. I mean, they're in business for that. They've already got inventory on the shelves to sell fireworks for Memorial Day. Are you okay with allowing that to happen, and then you come back to us with maybe some specific things you want excluded? You okay with that?
I don't know. I'd have to look and see what you're proposing exactly, because there's a lot of different definitions. And so I think for me to come back and tell you exactly which types we prefer, I'm not sure if we get on the same page based on where you're at right now, but I think that, I know that a lot of kids fire the bottle rockets and stuff. I certainly, but
I plan on shooting them. I'm just gonna
yeah.
tell you.
So I think that some of those fireworks people are going to continue to have, but I do think that the Roman candles and others that can pose some dangers to other people is what you got to look out for as well. So.
This also, I just want to bring to everyone's attention that this subsection that I'm adding, or that I've got in here for this amendment, it does not apply in the event the fire official has suspended the outdoor use of fireworks under subsection D. And subsection D lays out, a very broad definition of when it's appropriate to allow them and when it's not. So, we're still deferring. So the fire department would put out a message, essentially for these 4 days that says, look, it's not safe because of X, Y, and Z. No fireworks in the city this year. Sorry, folks. Or hey, we had a rain 2 days ago and the wind's not down. It appears to be safe for a fireworks. Or, you even have some discretion to eliminate some areas, I would say, because it's different. Downtown Mobile is totally different than large parcels out further in the city. So, we shouldn't shouldn't just blanket make our public policy based on, tight houses in downtown and take away rights.
Hold on, Mr. Carroll. Hold on, Mr. Carroll. Going to be Mr. Reynolds, going to be Ms. Gregory, Mr. Dave, then you, Mr. Carroll. You done, Mr. Reynolds? Ms. Gregory?
Didn't we have something within this proposed ordinance about getting a permit if you were going to do fireworks? Like if you wanted to have a neighborhood show or something, wasn't there something written in about getting a permit?
Yes, ma'am. That's typically going to be for the displays that are not consumer grade. That's going to be for the large pyrotechnic shows that are conducted by the city of Mobile or elsewhere. So that doesn't typically apply to a consumer grade fireworks that somebody may put on a show in their neighborhood.
Oh, so it would not include somebody who had like a neighborhood and they wanted to
No,
do
ma'am,
it?
not unless they were hiring a professional to shoot
to
off
do
a
it.
professional show.
Okay. But as far as purchasing various fireworks, we're not changing that because fireworks, as I understand it, are only sold in the county areas. We are not changing anything in the ordinance as to purchasing. It is the usage of the fireworks within the city.
See, that's an interesting component because most people believe that they weren't able to sell them in the city. So I only know of one, and that's what Councilman Reynolds mentioned the other day, but I'm not aware of any other fireworks stands in the city because everybody had the assumption it was illegal in the city. But when you come back to the ordinances, there was nothing clearly defining that legally. And so that's where we felt like that there was a gap and there needed to be something put on paper so that everybody's on the same page, because what people thought was happening, what was actually occurring is two different things.
It's really confusing, especially with talking about scaling back or perhaps being allowed to do certain types of fireworks on certain days and times and all of that sort of thing. I understand it's getting close to Memorial Weekend and people probably have plans and they would like to do some things. I just don't know if we're ready to go full scale with what Ben is suggesting just yet. I don't know how everybody else feels.
Mr. Dave, then Mr. Carroll.
Yeah, Mr. President, I have to admit that I am mystified by this. What we have before us from the administration is a piece of legislation that models what every other large city in the state of Alabama is doing. We have our fire chief telling us that he supports the adoption of this legislation. I just, as I say, I'm mystified as to why we're spending so much time on this question when the path forward is so clear.
Mr. Carroll.
Is there a way to find some type of common ground to allow certain open areas of the city to use these aerial devices?
Yes, sir. I'd be happy to have these conversations with you to try to find a pathway forward. I mean, we're not opposed to that, but I think we're just,
There are some open neighborhoods that have immense open areas. So I think that,
Then you start looking at permits and getting somebody who's a professional.
I'm open to some type of compromise here. Because I know what some areas of the city do, even out where the fire department's old building out here on the river off of River Desheen. I don't know if you remember that the activities that used to happen there. I do. And then right across the lake at Lipscomb's Landing and also at River Desheen, and especially back there, Lynxman's about to be active again, so they won't be back up in that open area shooting fireworks or Roman candles like they used to. But there are a lot of areas in the city that have historically had neighborhoods provide their own fireworks. So I wouldn't want to take those open areas away from them. But I do want to protect those areas of high density where we have a real problem. So some type of language I would be amenable to that, as long as it protects the areas of the city that are extremely vulnerable to it.
Mr. President,
Yeah. Ms. Reynolds.
I want to draw everyone's attention to the fact that I'll do this again. The subsection for consumer grade fireworks shall not apply in the event the fire official has suspended the outdoor use of fireworks under the foregoing subsection D. So then we go to subsection D. Subsection D says Foregoing notwithstanding, the fire official may at any time and from time to time suspend the outdoor use of novelties and sparkling devices and inside the city limits where he determines at his sole discretion that drought conditions or other weather-related conditions or the promotion or preservation of public safety warrant suspension. So we've already accounted for that. We've already accounted for the fact that there could be fireworks in this part of the city, but not in this part of the city, or over here or over there, or this type or that type. Sole discretion is placed on our fire chief, our professional. We are turning it over to him to make that call
So that
while
lends,
still preserving everybody's right that they have today.
well, that also, if that's the language, that lends itself to the need and use of permitting also. So
permitting
it
is
won't
addressed.
be. That lends itself to the need of permitting and who's going to regulate the permitting and who's going to provide the resources that are going to be required for permitting, like fire truck, water services, all those things. Because if you have so many people out there doing this at one time, that takes away from the ability to respond to a real fire. So how do we handle that?
I'll say this, I'm not against fireworks by any means, and I want our citizens to have a great time, but I will say that I took a lot of consideration into what our sister cities are doing and tried to model something that was similar to what they had, with the exception of allowing the novelties, which some cities are starting to allow. I've tried to put forth the best information I can with you to model off of similar examples. I know that y'all quite often on everything that we do, we look at what everybody else is doing. That doesn't mean that's what we're going to do, but I think that there's some wisdom in doing that. And so that's the approach that we took. But we can certainly have more conversations if you'd like to.
Mr. Dave.
One more question before we give this up. Can we still shoot bottle rockets?
Not with the current ordinance that's on the table.
Can we shoot bottle rockets with this?
According to this would be, those would be prohibited because they're aerial device based on this.
Can't shoot any more bottle rockets.
Not based on this. You can, but you just would not be following the ordinance.
I don't know if I like that.
Mr. Dave and Cord, and we're going to move on.
This, even if what the administration has proposed is passed, it's going to be very difficult to enforce.
It's going to be what?
Difficult to enforce.
That's true.
And now we're talking about telling everybody out there, well, in this part of town you can do it, but in this part of town you can't do it. Or you can do bottle rockets, but you can't do Roman candles. Or you can do. There's absolutely no way we can. There's absolutely no way we can put the enforcement personnel under that kind of loose, vague, or our citizens. We're making it far too complicated. We spend enough time on it.
Mr. Penn.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm kind of in the same agreement with Joel, is that we're not going to be able to enforce this at all. And the truth of the matter is people going to shoot fireworks regardless of what we decide to do today, regardless. So, I mean, even if we say they can't, people going to shoot fireworks. I understand Councilman Reynolds, but I think people still going to do it anyway. So even if, for me, I feel like we need to just vote, move past. If we want to hold it over and try to get some wording, I'm fine with that as well. But I think we need to kind of just go move forward. I think we've been kind of talking about it because people are going to shoot fireworks. You're not going to be able to enforce this. Just period. But I think from a city perspective, we got to put y'all the experts. I'm not the expert, and there's a reason why our cities from our bigger cities in the state are doing this. And maybe this is to protect them and protect us in a way, putting the ordinance in place for if a situation occur. And sometimes you got to put things in place to prepare for situations like that. And so thank you so much for all the work that you all been doing. And that's why I stand. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
All right. Madam Clerk.
01517, authorized agreement between the City of Mobile, Mobile County Commission, VT, May 02.
Oh,
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just Briefly, this is a new project we've been working on for quite some time with VTMAE. It's an expansion. We competed with multiple other sites in the country for conversion of passenger aircraft to tanker aircraft. They'll actually be converting A320s from passenger aircraft to tanker. Mobile and San Antonio were the two locations that were selected for this additional line. This will be the first project agreement that we've had with VTMAE, which establishes a baseline for employment and ties to this incentive of $187,500 to 200 new jobs above a baseline, which they will have to maintain during a maintenance period. So this incentive itself is $37,500 a year for the next few years to get to a total of $187,500 for these 200 new jobs.
Any questions from the council? Thank you so much, Mr. Martin.
02571 is sent to the annexation of certain properties by the city of Sims.
Any questions from the council? Ms. Ross?
Give us some maps that will help explain this, hopefully.
Jesus, Mary and Joseph Slate.
It'll go quick. On February 23, Sims, this is the Kings Branch annexation area, as adopted last week. The original maps brought it up further up. On February 23, Sims came into this area and annexed these properties here. They're vacant. But they annexed them, which forced us to go back and redraw the legal descriptions. Also on February 23rd, Sims, this is the Orchard Estates map, as y'all passed it last week. If you remember from the original study maps, it went a little further north. This parcel and one more up here. Sims jumped across Schillinger Road and annexed the property up here. And then started taking action to annex this. Again, when they did that, we had to go back, redo our legal descriptions and our mapping to cut it back. This is how Sims did it. Their property, their city limits stopped here. They came down that dirt road. Took in these parcels, skipped across this right of way, took in these parcels to get them to Schillinger Road. And this is where they jumped across. They took in this parcel here and this parcel here, sorry, just that one. Realizing that every time Sims did that and looking at what they planned to do, we entered into discussions with them and said that we would consent to them annexing this parcel here. The first one they did on February 23rd. If they would stop doing that pending our annexation elections. They came back and proposed, well, we want the city's consent to annex all of these. And we drew the line right here where this orange line is. And that's what this resolution and the memorandum that goes with it are all about. The annexation laws say that when you have overlapping police jurisdictions, which we have here, Mobile's police PJ goes 3 miles this way, Sims's goes 1.5 miles this way, so they're overlapping. Sims cannot annex into our jurisdiction and go all the way to our city limit line like they did. But there is a way they can do it. Since they were already here, the annexation statute, believe it or not, says that they could annex
Yeah.
to the midpoint. And once they go to the midpoint, the next week, they can go to the next midpoint. And the next week, they can go to the next midpoint to where they get to about that close to our city limit. So that's why we went ahead and spoke to them. And the resolution provides, let me back up. Or the statute also says, instead of requiring the annexing city, in this case Sims, to go to the midpoint and then the midpoint and the midpoint, the two cities can come to an agreement. And in this case, Mobile can agree to allow them to come all the way to our city limit without having to skip midpoint to midpoint. And that's what this resolution is about. The resolution consents to Sims annexing these properties to the west of Schillinger and these properties to the west, and only these properties here above that orange line, all the way to our city limit. And in exchange, pursuant to the memorandum, Sims has agreed to stop all annexations within our PJ pending the annexation election or November 1st, whichever comes first. So we know the annexation election will now be before November 1st. So it allows us the opportunity to conduct the annexation elections without Sims doing anything else to annex within our PJ. And the Mayor Van Hook has already signed the memorandum of agreement.
So if they decided to annex some of the area that we've agreed to allow a referendum today, what would that cost?
That would cause us to go back. The resolution that y'all passed last week would be void. If they came into our jurisdiction and annexed something, like right here, below this orange line, this is in our annexation election. If they came across Schillinger and annexed to the halfway point, that would make that resolution void.
So close to the
We'd have to
city
go back,
limits. So
remap
that
it,
would cause a
do
lawsuit.
legal description, and bring it back to council for another resolution. So by doing this memorandum, they've agreed to not annex within our jurisdiction. So we've with the memorandum, we've got to a point where we're not having to worry about that. Did that answer your question?
I think so.
And every time that they was to annex the area, we'd have to go back and
Withdraw.
Aren't there some laws that govern the distance that they can come within the city limits without causing a lawsuit?
The midpoint.
That's right. Is that, but they've already gone beyond the midpoint there. They've come up
They
to the
have.
line.
They have. And in my discussions with the city attorney for Sims, he acknowledged that they went too far here and that they would have to undo that ordinance and then do another one to go to the midpoint.
This is faster than a lawsuit, cheaper than a lawsuit.
I'm not suggesting it. The way he was explaining it was, like, hey, they can do this, but they really can encroach without consent of the city. So what we're doing is we're giving them consent to encroach.
Well, they can encroach to the midpoint without our consent at all.
Right.
Yes, they can go beyond the midpoint with our consent.
Have we ironed out the location of that development?
Still competitive.
We're still competing. Are we in the competition?
We will be.
Are we gonna get it? Is what you're telling me.
Hey, Jim.
Mr. Davis, then Ms. Union, Ms. Gregory.
Thank you, Mr. Rossler. I would like to commend Mr. Rossler and the administration for reaching this amicable agreement with the city of Sims that allows us to move forward with our annexation vote.
Well, also, I think it's probably a good idea to explain how the city of Sims is able to do what they are doing step by step, neighborhood by neighborhood, as opposed to how we are doing it because we've all read the news articles about neighborhoods coming in, taking these documents back to your neighborhood, getting your neighbors to sign. And they had already gone into one of our neighborhoods and had some neighbors who had signed on. So what is the difference between how we do it and they do it?
The way we do it by election is only available to cities that have a population of 25,000 or more.
Right.
So Sims cannot do it the way that we are doing it. The way they do it is by consent of the property owner.
Is it 100% of the area or how, or does it have to be the entire?
Consent is 100% of the landowners. That's why they do it parcel by parcel.
So it's parcel by parcel.
Yes.
And the large parcels that they've taken have been by one property.
Yes, all
Yeah.
those parcels in the Kings Branch area that
Yeah.
we talked about originally,
Yeah.
they're very large parcels owned by one person. I will tell you that the Sims attorney told me that they have consents,
Yeah. From
From
people
some
within. Yeah.
at least a dozen,
Uh-huh.
within the Kings Branch
Right.
neighborhood. So I would also like to commend the city of Sims and its mayor and council and their attorney for, in the spirit of cooperation,
Giving it
you
up.
know, to giving us the opportunity to move forward.
Yeah. A compromise with the city of Sims at this point seems to be the best path forward to let us move on with our annexation and hopefully have a very successful annexation vote.
Right, and
Yeah.
I don't want to speak for them, but in my discussions with their attorney, I think he echoed exactly what Mr. Woods just said.
Yeah.
The lawsuit
Yeah.
is a lot more expensive, takes a lot more time.
Yeah.
Cooperation is sometimes the better path.
Anyone else? Thank you, Mr. Ross.
08572, approved purchase order to sand some equipment for two street sweepers. Street sweepers. 08573, approved purchase order to Samsung for two side load garbage trucks. 08574, approved purchase order to Toter LLC for garbage cart lids and wheels. 21575, 576, 577 are contracts with Peyton Hickman, Matthew Brooks, and Whitsett Herring to provide tennis lessons. 21578, authorized contract amendment with Life Extension Clinics doing business as Life Scan Wellness Centers for first responder medical screening services. 21579, authorized contract with Melt LLC. 21580, authorized memorandum of understanding between the City of Mobile and the City of Sims. 37581, consider approval of a certificate of public convenience and necessity to Africatown Freedom Tours LLC to operate a bus service. 6582, 583 are authorizing settlement agreement and release of claims. 21584, authorized contract with Chris Brewer Contracting for Dolphin Street Emergency Drainage Repair Project. Announcements.
Anything from the council? Anything from the administration? If not, we'll see each other at 10:30.
Yeah.